up and take this countdown out of here. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, Kathy. Hello, hello. I'm going to even type hello, hello. It is good to see everyone. Yes, I am back. It's been a couple of weeks. I've broken my promise of being here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Hopefully I won't have to do that anymore in the future. It's been a very busy couple of weeks. We'll talk a little bit about that. If you've never watched this before, this is your first time, this is a show we call Breakfast with Disaster. There is no breakfast, there are disasters. My name is Dan Bauer with ServPro of the South Townsend, ServPro of West Seneca Lancaster, and why do I know anything about disaster? It's because it's what we do every single day. Water, fire, mold, bio, anything gross or catastrophic, big or small. We are there trying to make it like it never even happened. And we're going to talk today about a pretty major disaster. You may have seen it in the news. I thought it was a very telling example of why this stuff is important to talk about in the first place. And hopefully it lights a fire under you to think about disasters a little bit more, because they can happen and can happen pretty suddenly. Just a quick look. Good morning, Michael, Al, Jackie, Kathy. We got, who else here? Sam, Jennifer, Devin, Diane. My screen is glitching out. Lynn. Good to see everybody. Say hey in the comments if you're here. It's the only way I know you are here, and we'll talk about why that is important prize-wise in a second. But anyway, this show's usually educational, and we have, like, topics we talk about, like pipe bursts, and we talk about why mold forms and things like that. No fun, right? Nobody wants to be in school. We are going to tell a story today instead, and it's about a school, so we're kind of circling back on that, but think of it more as a cautionary tale. It's about this school here, Cresskill High School in Bergen County, New Jersey. Not a high school anywhere here. You may have seen this story recently in the news, and last September in the news. Our story here today starts September 1st, 2021, which is a big year, big time for schools. And you guys may guess why. Schools, September 1st, 2021, are just about to get back to normal again. They have just done an entire year, maybe a year plus, of virtual learning because of COVID-19. Things have been locked down. Kids haven't been able to go. We all, if you have kids or you talk to anybody who has kids, you know that virtual learning is not always the greatest, and kids like to be together in school. So everybody's excited. In fact, September 1st, right, it's the second to last day of band camp. So the marching band's there at the school, and they're having a blast. They are practicing this whole routine, right, that is meant to be about, the theme was overcoming. And they've got a set list that is all about, standing up and overcoming and, getting over the hill. I think it's like I'm Still Standing was on there. Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow was on there. Lean on Me was on there. This whole message of hope. Everybody's super excited to get back to school and get back to classes. Marching band is on the field. They hear a sound. Big sound. Big crack from the sky. It's a peal of thunder, which in itself was not really a huge surprise. They knew it was going to rain. They knew their time was probably going to be cut short practicing. They hear that thunder. They call it for the day. Kids go home. Band director says it's cool to do a little bit of work. Custodians are there. It starts to rain. They didn't expect any more rain than would maybe, at worst, right, would maybe flood the parking lot, which is annoying, but whatever. What actually happens is the remnants of Hurricane Ida make their way up to Bergen County, New Jersey, and they make their way up to Cresskill High School. 7 inches of rain pound into that school over the course of a few hours, which is a lot of rain. And if you're trying to visualize how much rain that is, I will show you this next picture. This is their auditorium. This school floods massively. It's a combination of the just intense amount of rainfall and a design flaw that they didn't even know existed. The way that their ventilation system was installed and the way those vents were placed, all of that rain runs through the ductwork off of the roof right into the school. Actually, the custodian that I just mentioned has to stay the night in the gym because he gets trapped in there. And obviously this auditorium is not in good shape. As you can imagine, that long-awaited return to the classroom that's supposed to happen 2 days from this initial rainfall does not happen. And as of March 21st, 2022, which is my last update, it still has not happened. If you ask the superintendent, he will tell you, he'll sort of shake his head and say, I don't even have a school anymore. I just have a building, and I can't do anything with it. water flooded this entire place, and nothing was untouched. Um, let's look at it. Why is that so bad, right? It's just water. Well, let's look in the micro first. Uh, Critical building systems, everything from like the boiler room, obviously the ductwork, those all need expensive repair, if not replacement, just in order to function. Um, and the actual supplies, it's funny, until you work in a school like this, you don't think of all the things that a school needs to run that are kind of silly or sound silly or you don't really think about. But all these supplies, everything from like Bunsen burners to sousaphones, has been touched by this water. And not to get too into the weeds of the science of this, but generally floodwater, rainwater, is considered to be Category 3 water, which is as contaminated as sewage. Most of this stuff cannot be cleaned. A lot of it has to be thrown out. In fact, if you're wondering how much damage, you're a numbers person, you want to know how much this actually cost, I will tell you. And I'm not the Servpro who did this, by the way, so don't get jealous of me. This is just a number. Flood inspectors came in after this rainfall. They estimated the entire cost of repair and replacement, get the school back up and running. I don't know if anybody has any guesses. Well, wait a second. You can write it down on a piece of paper. $21.6 million worth of damage. It happened in the space of like 4 hours of rain. $21.6 million. Now, thankfully, right, this school has flood insurance. And there are a lot of insurance agents on this broadcast here. So I'd be curious to know your opinion of flood insurance, your opinion of catastrophic insurance claims in general. School had flood insurance. The payout was limited to $2 million, which when the school got that claim, or when got that policy, they probably thought that was great. $2 million. They have $22 million of damage, basically. They have about $18 million gap to cover. That's tough for anybody, and especially for a school, because here's the rub. FEMA, the government, of course the government's going to get involved, everything's going to be great, right? Not so. FEMA does have a fund that they can release money to the school. That additional $18 million can come to Cresskill High School to do these repairs. The kicker is they can only pay it out on a reimbursement basis. And I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of school districts that have $18 million sitting in the bank. This in itself wouldn't be as big a deal, except for the fact that in New Jersey, there's a state statute that says a school cannot borrow money without the direct consent of the voters. So despite the fact that the school has this $18 million available and that it could apply for it and get reimbursed in relatively short order, they're legally barred from borrowing the money to do it. And while the rest of the world goes back to school, September 2021, everything's getting back to normal, everybody at Cresskill High School is way back to Zoom. Even that band program, right? The marching band has to start practicing on Zoom. And you know what that looks like? It's a bunch of kids with their microphones muted, because otherwise it would be terrible to listen to, pretending to practice in front of this band director who would put this entire program together to welcome everybody back. Now I want to pause here and just talk about the implications of all this. Because Creskill's story, obviously look at this picture, right? It sounds extreme. We can look at other pictures, like here's the boiler room, etc. This is an example of a type of situation, maybe an extreme example, but a type of situation that plays out pretty often in the world of disasters. You see anyone from like single-family homes with small losses. You see large commercial businesses. A lot of these perfect storm situations where something happens you couldn't anticipate and really targets your weak points, these happen more often than you would think, and we see them pretty much every single day. And there's really no way to prevent them or to be totally prepared, but that does not mean that you should not try. I'm not going to get too deep into emergency planning. I would love to talk to anybody on this. You want me to come and talk about emergency planning, help you with an emergency plan, I'm more than happy to do that. But I would imagine you've probably done, especially for a business, you've probably done something, right? Most businesses at least have that like fire drill, poster on the wall. They've thought about what if XYZ happens. The bad news is, and here's what I found, emergency planning tends to be a little lackluster. I'm going to refer, actually, because what do I know, right? I'm going to refer to the rules put out by BOMA International, the Building Owners and Managers Association. In full disclosure, I'm on the board of our Buffalo chapter, proud member, so I'm a little bit biased, but I think they have a lot of good things to say on this topic, and we do not have time to go into their whole 174-page guidebook, but here are the 4 points that they make about emergency plans. So if you have yours pulled up, think about it. 4 things that most plans miss that could mitigate, help prevent some of the damage that we saw here at Cresskill. Number one, plans tend not to be super comprehensive. There should be 4 phases of any emergency plan, and most only have 1. Those 4 phases are pretty simple to remember. There's mitigation phase. How are you preventing and reducing damage before it happens? There's the preparedness phase. Do you have a plan? Are you studying that plan? Are you practicing that plan? Are you stocking the supplies called for in that plan? Are you reviewing your insurance coverages? One thing people always forget, by the way, in insurance agents, I've had a lot of conversations with people, and I've tried to steer them your way. Things like cybersecurity insurance fall under this. Have you thought about that ever? That's in the preparedness section of this. Response, obviously, and this is what most people kind of limit themselves to. How do you respond when the chips are down? What does that evacuation plan look like? Things like that. And the number one thing that I think is most forgotten is the recovery phase. Do you have a plan to limit disruption, to enable continuity of operations, or continuity of living in your home, things like that? Most people don't really think about that because they assume that they're just going to have to roll with the punches, and that's simply not true, especially for a business or, in this case, a school. Having something as simple as a vendor list together, who you're going to call for what, or having it sketched out, who's going to talk to the media, in Cresskill's case, was not sketched out. Things like that. There are so many different pieces of that, and I can help anybody think through them if they want. Those things are usually missing, those 4 things. There are other elements that, we're getting on in years here with this broadcast. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but there are other elements that are often missing. Plans aren't usable. They're super long. They're paragraphy. They're hard to read. They're not accessible via cell phone, which is the standard of access now in 2022. They're not specific to buildings, which is less of a problem for homes, obviously, than it is for commercial businesses. But you'd be surprised how many large commercial businesses with many, many buildings potentially have an emergency plan that basically just says shut off the water with no instructions how to do it per building. Things like that are shortcomings that need to be worked on if these plans are going to be usable, and by and large they're not. And again, this isn't me talking. I've seen it in person, but this is BOMA talking. And trust me when I say they know their stuff. So that's my little digression, right? Because this Cresskill stuff is scary, right? I want to go back to Cresskill, though, because there's a somewhat happy ending. Their story has not ended yet, though. Late January of this year, so January 2022, they finally were able to put a referendum in front of the local community that basically gave them permission to borrow that $18 million that they needed to start the repair process and get reimbursed by FEMA. So they got that money. At best, though, all of this work, even the basic work just to get people back in the doors, is not going to be done until, at best, fall of this year. So this entire year, kids have been out of school. They've been on Zoom. They've been meeting at a local church sometimes. This has not been an ideal learning environment, and I won't get too much into this, but it is something I'm passionate about, especially for special needs kids who really, that virtual learning may not be giving them what they need to actually learn. And that money that's been approved, it's not for really fixing any of the problems that led to this in the first place. It's just for replacing and repairing things that were damaged. So, sure, they can get their sousaphones and their Bunsen burners. They do not have the money, and they probably won't for a very long time, to fix those vents that led to all this rainfall coming in and flooding this school in the first place. And because they didn't know that problem existed, because they hadn't planned for it, because they hadn't addressed it before, they're in a $22 million hole for fixing it. And if Hurricane, let's name a hurricane. Hurricane, who's on here? I'm going to name a hurricane after someone. Hurricane Kaylee. Why not? I'll pick on Kaylee since she works for us. Hurricane Kaylee comes next year and hits this school again, the exact same thing could happen. And they're going to have to go through the entire process again and again and again. Because we've seen more of these gigantic, catastrophic natural disasters every single year. And I'm not going to get too much into that. That's another show. So, are they going to get to the other side of this? Hopefully. Are they going to be prepared for the future? Not really. They're already in the hole. They're already behind the 8 ball because they didn't do it in the first place and the big one hit. Do not let that happen to you. And I don't know what the big one means to you. It could be a fire in your house. It could be a burst pipe. Sometimes these smaller, I hate to call them minor because they're huge deals to people, but sometimes even those smaller things can spiral out of control. It does not need to be 7 inches of rain in your auditorium to drastically alter the course of your life. And it is very, very important to be prepared, to plan, to have the proper insurance coverage, to know who to call when. and this is not a plug for ServPro, but somewhat it is, you can call me. I am more than willing to help with both the planning and the response. And you want to talk about, if you've been watching Ghosts on the BBC, I will talk to you about that too. I really like that show. I'm here for all of that if you need it. We're going to cut it here. We're going to do what everybody's here to really see, and that's the prize drawing. I'm bringing my wheel of names. We have a lot of new names on here, and I'm still adding them from the school facilities workshop that I taught at last week. So if you're watching and you're not adding on here, I'm sorry. I'm working on it. I promise that I've got maybe 100 some new Mug Club members, which is very exciting. Right now I'm just going to spin. Let me put my sound up so we can get the good clicky sound. There we go. Everybody likes the clicky sound. All right. We're looking at 359. And that's going to be Kathy Coleman at the Arcade Night Agency. Kathy. Are you on? So I forgot to mention this, and that is my mistake. Got a comment, because it's the only way I know you're here. And if you're watching and you win the prize, you will win a double prize. So, Kathy, did you comment? Did I see you? No, you have a couple seconds to do it before I wrap up. I do want to say good morning to everybody I didn't talk to already. Jackie, Kathy, Al, Michael, Lisa, Nikki, good morning. Al, again, Ruth, Melissa, Megan, Kaylee, Hallie, how's it going? And I agree, Nikki, my lovely wife. Yes, everybody should watch BBC Ghosts on HBO Max. It's the real message of this broadcast. Thank you guys for watching. It is good to be back. I will be back next Tuesday, as I always am, at 10 a.m. for Breakfast with Disaster, where we will talk about, hopefully, something a little less awful. And I'll see you guys next week. Be safe out there. Do some emergency planning, and I'll talk to you soon.